Paul, we have been talking about this for nearly a year, coming down to the JFK.
Yeah, Arboretum here in Wexford, just outside New Ross, not too far from the family home in Dunganstown. I suppose it's interesting as well because before John F. Kennedy, he was murdered and assassinated in 1963, and almost 61 years later, his nephew Robert Kennedy has just stepped out of the presidential race to run to be the next president of the United States, and he's backing Donald Trump, which is interesting because Kennedy's, of course, big Democratic name, backing a Republican candidate. Interesting.
But interesting too, Paul, Donald Trump was a Democrat before he
Yeah,
was
that's true.
elected.
That's true. And Ronald Reagan was the same, so it's not unusual for people to move from Democrats to Republicans and stuff like that. So it's going to be very, very interesting as well, because I'd say, the fact that if it had been, say, Trump versus Biden, I think Trump would have probably won very comprehensively. But the fact now that, Joe Biden wouldn't have stepped aside, or was asked to step aside, if they didn't think he was able to win. So, with Kamala Harris in there now, what's the dynamic going to be? And
I'm sure she does just laugh.
yeah. But
Giggle.
it was interesting as well. I know one of the reasons Robert Kennedy stepped down was because he was finding it very difficult to get on the ballot in a number of different states, and in certain states, swing states like Michigan, which they talk a lot about swing states in America, he was polling on 5%. So if that 5% goes to Trump, that'll make a big difference. So I think it's very much all to play for.
I do think Donald Trump will be the next president. He'll be the 47th president of the United States of America, the 45 to 47 president.
Yeah. It's going to be very, very interesting because it's a big election in America. All presidential elections are big, but this is interesting. And what Robert Kennedy is saying, is interesting. Roshan, he's talking about farming, as of course we can see farmers, making hay while the sun shines. As they do, because
and the sun is shining.
It's a lovely day here down in Wexford, here in the sunny southeast. So that's something that we've talked a lot about in the last number of months. Farming, fisheries, food production, stuff like that. And Robert Kennedy's talking a lot about.
He's talking a lot about the food sources, clean food, and no chemicals or additives in the food.
Exactly.
And it's about clean food, and also about how China is buying up all the farms in America.
Yeah, exactly. And he's spoke a lot about chronic diseases and stuff like that, and
autism, which we covered
as well. And he's of the opinion that the food that we're eating is having an impact, and it is leading to these chronic diseases as well. And unfortunately, you think with pharmaceutical companies, their job would be to try, alleviate things like diabetes and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to keep the thing going, because if there's no diabetes, how are they going to have a profit and have an industry? So it's interesting.
Yeah, we really do need to look into what products are in our food. What are we eating? Because when you think about it too, we've stopped eating in-season food, Paul.
Oh, absolutely,
We've stopped that. And it's also really fascinating because I think another Kennedy is going to be in the White House alongside President Donald Trump.
Yeah, it does very much look like that. If Donald Trump gets elected, Robert Kennedy will have a job in the new Trump administration. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes as well. And it's also interesting as well that the Kennedy family, they weren't backing Robert up for various different reasons, but they haven't come out and backed Kamala Harris. So that's interesting too as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to it and watching it. And this is a great introduction because, Paul, we've been saying for so long that we'll come down, a year, but that we'll come down to the JFK Kennedy Arboretum down in Wexford. And we kept saying, we'll wait for a good day.
We picked a great day, in fairness.
And it's so relevant to the day when we've actually chosen to come down. It's so relevant politically and in the news. Yeah,
last day of August as well, and we're the Dáil will be resuming here in our own country, Ireland, and there's a budget coming up, and then I suppose general elections not around the corner as well, and I suppose Ireland and America, the ties are so strong. So,
strong.
regardless who's in the White House, whether you agree with them or not, it's very important that Ireland maintains a good relationship with the United States.
Well, President Obama didn't do anything for Ireland.
No.
And had no interest in Ireland. And so it's very interesting. So I think it's exciting. Everything's to play for. And I've been following this for a long time, Paul, as you have. And it's just really interesting how Ireland and America are so politically linked.
Yeah.
And how all presidents, Paul, they all want to have a link to Ireland.
Absolutely. They reckon close to nearly 100 million people in America claim to have some Irish ancestry or connection or something like that. So it just goes to show how strong the relationship is between Ireland and America. Like, we're the only country in the world, Roisin, that has guaranteed time in the White House, Patrick's Day, every year since a year dot nearly at this stage. So that just goes to show the importance of our relationship between Ireland and the United States, and a lot of their companies are actually based here as well.
Yeah.
So one might say, are they here because of generous tax incentives? Possibly, but they're Ireland and America, the connections are really, really strong.
And too, Paul, when you think about it, every president every presidential candidate always wants to have a connection to Ireland.
Absolutely.
And I was reading in a book recently, I think it was Rachel Right-Side Blonde, and I stand to be corrected on that. She put up a photograph that in a political book, that Bill Clinton claimed to have Irish ancestry. But when when he came over, the Irish government tried to look for his ancestry and couldn't find it.
Really, that's interesting. Of course, JFK was the first Irish Catholic president of America, which was absolutely huge at the time. To have somebody, in the White House at the time. And of course, when he came to Ireland in 1963, with summer 1963, it was a really, really big deal. He dressed both houses of the Oireachtas, and unfortunately he was assassinated in November that year. But it would have been interesting to see how history would have fared had he got a second term, which I say he probably would have.
And also with Bobby Kennedy being assassinated.
Yes.
And then with JFK Jr.'s plane going down and the bodies being recovered. And also, when you think JFK Jr. also launched the George magazine.
That's right, yeah. I remember John F. Kennedy Jr., his plane crashing in 1999. I was only, 12. That was probably my first kind of introduction to the Kennedys and who they were. Unfortunately, they're a very tragic family, sadly, but they're a massive name in American politics.
I think they're a very brave family, very courageous family, and I think there's a lot more interest in the JFKs and the Kennedys now, and even JFK Jr. and the George magazine. I remember the George magazine being launched. I'm watching it on television.
Wow.
And then during the last couple of years, I was, during the lockdowns, we were on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I came across Rachel Right-Side Blonde, where she actually has a collection of the original George magazines.
Wow.
And her interest came in on the George magazines while she was cleaning out a basement, a friend's basement.
Exactly.
And she came across a George magazine.
Just goes to show one person's rubbish is another person's treasure.
Yeah. So now she has all the collection of the George magazine, and it's the original, and she reads out on YouTube all the original articles in the George magazine. So if you're interested in American politics...
It must be, sorry for interrupting there, it must be really interesting to be reading it now in 2024 and kind of say how can you compare and contrast.
It's actually relevant.
Yeah.
Everything that JFK Jr. wrote about is very relevant to today's politics.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course his famous quote is here on the little, as you come in here to JFK Park, ask not what you can do for your country, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country.
So ask not what you can do, Ask not what your country can. Paul, now you got me linked in. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I was also noticing, Paul, Dr. Phil has been interviewing President Donald J. Trump,
Okay.
along with Robert Kennedy Jr. And so he's very much into the political commentary nowadays.
Yeah, interesting. You don't associate Dr. Phil with political commentary, but it's interesting. That's interesting to see.
And we also, in our Irish politics, have a Dr. Phil.
Yeah,
Phil Hogan is now known as Dr. Phil Hogan.
Yeah, he has got an honorary doctorate from the university, from UCC in politics, because he is still a wily political operator. He mightn't be there in the foreground, but he certainly has a massive influence. But
I say nothing goes on in Ireland.
Local, nationally and internationally.
I say nothing goes on in Ireland that Dr. Phil Hogan doesn't know.
I'd agree with you there totally.
Wouldn't it be really interesting, Paul, to have an interview with the two Dr. Phils,
Yeah.
Dr. Phil Hogan and Dr. Phil McGrath?
God, we could certainly sell tickets for that.
You know, it's just amazing, and we're delighted to be here, and it's so beautiful to be here. And as we came in, Paul, we took a photograph of the plaque outside.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
entrance.
Yeah.
And the sun, the ray of the sun came down, and I thought, wow, that's a message.
Yeah,
that
says
you
it all.
know, that President Kennedy is really looking down on the earth right
Absolutely,
now, and
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
helping in the background and ending all this corruption.
Exactly. Yeah. So his light and his memory shines on.
It definitely does, and so does JFK Jr.'s light shines on through the George magazine and through what Rachel Rightside Blonde is actually revitalizing on YouTube. So, Paul, we're going to have another look around here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really, really interesting about the farming and the
Came here on a
bales in the
great
background.
day. Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the biggest. It's a huge amount of land here as well, and there's various different species of flowers and trees and stuff that you won't find anywhere else in Ireland or in Europe. So it's a really important place for preservation of species of plants and trees that you wouldn't see anywhere else. So that's one of the main functions of this facility now.
And Paul, you know, what I really, really would like to say is there's a lovely energy here.
Absolutely.
There's a lovely feeling and energy, and maybe that's why here on this land that there are so many creatures and birds and insects and flowers here on the land that are not anywhere else.
And I believe when you do a walk around Roisin, that you can actually look down on the Kennedy ancestral home of Dunganstown, which is just outside New Ross, where John F. Kennedy's ancestors is probably his great grandfather. That's where they all originated, and they, like lots of people that went away to America, you know, probably in difficult circumstances to make a better life, and they certainly made a huge contribution to American life. And you know, the Kennedy name will always be associated with strong ties between Ireland and the United States.
And also, what I find interesting is we were in the centre over there with all the photographs of
lovely,
JFK and the First Lady, Jackie Kennedy, and her favourite colour was actually Tiffany blue.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise my daughter gave me a pair of sunglasses a couple of years ago, and the box is Tiffany blue.
Yeah.
And in the centre, some beautiful photographs of the President, J.F. Kennedy, and his wife, the First Lady, Jackie Kennedy. And what I noticed was there's a photograph of President Kennedy with his daughter, Jacqueline, but none with his son, JFK Jr.
Yeah, I think he was either one or two when his father was killed, so that...
There's still lots of photographs with his father.
There has to be, yeah.
So just curious, why there's no photographs of JFK Jr. with his mother and father. And there's also we have the photographs and the video that would be at the end of this. Also in here on display is some beautiful dresses and outfits that the First Lady of the American, the First Lady wore, and there's some beautiful dresses.
Yeah.
On display here.
Jackie Bouvier she was when before she got married, and then she remarried. She became Jackie Onassis. She married a Greek multimillionaire.
She'll always be Jackie Kennedy to us
Absolutely,
all.
absolutely.
And she was also a journalist.
She was.
And that's how she met JFK.
Yeah.
She was a journalist.
He was. Yeah, he was a journalist for a short period before he was elected to
And I hear
the
she
US
was
Senate.
a great editor as well.
Okay, very good, very good.
And there's I love the intro and the outro of Rachel Wright's Blonde videos, because you have JFK Jr. being interviewed, and he asks, and initially the American host says, "I believe your mother was a great editor." And the beautiful smile that JFK Jr. says, "I believe she was." It's the smile nobody had for his mother respect. It's a smile. I just think that's so cute as a mother.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's great to be here, and I suppose it's great. There's a lot happening both internationally and we've had a lot happening locally, because we've local elections, which was
and European.
Which we covered here in the Irish Poltical Rounduo, which was a great success. And I'd like to say thanks to all our viewers who tuned in for our coverage.
4,000 views.
4,000 views. Thank you very much. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Roisin, yourself. It was your vision, your drive, your dynamism. You made it happen. To our technical wizards, Keelan, who's there in the background, our cameraman, Roisin's son, and to
my favourite son.
Favourite son, absolutely. And to also to Paddy Manning, who helped us out over the election count weekend. It was a great help.
And Paul, what's going to be very interesting, and I find very interesting indeed, is we have the American elections on the 5th of November, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then possibly the Irish elections in November.
Yeah, the 15th of November seems to be being thrown about. So really, if the government are looking, there's going to be a budget in early October. So the question is then, do they go after the budget, or do they wait till February? So, both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will probably think they can probably be re-elected, maybe with a third wheel. So they could go in November, or if they don't go in November, they're looking at February. So that's the way it's going, because with the budget now on the way, you're going to see lots of leaks in papers about different measures that both parties want and stuff like that. And there is money there for Jack Chambers, new Minister for Finance, to play with. He's very, very young too as well, so how's he going to manage it all? That's the interesting thing.
Well, and I think a lot's going to be developed, and a lot of things are going to come out. An awful lot of politicians are retiring and not seeking re-election.
Yeah, I did I'm actually keeping a spreadsheet for our listeners, so for the general election, whenever that is called, and the amount of retiring I have to put in. I think there's over 20, if you take into account those retiring plus the TDs that were elected to the Dáil, for Michael McGrath, who's going to become the EU Commissioner, as well over, I think, like 25 people are not seeking election at the next general election. So there's obviously a range of different reasons for that, but it's going to be very interesting. So you're going to see a lot of new faces, and you might see a few surprises as well.
Well, you know what? We wait in great anticipation for the American elections and the presidency, and also to our very own national general election, Paul.
One thing that I find hard to wrap around about the American election is the electoral college.
Yeah.
Like you can win the popular vote, but if you mightn't win the electoral college vote. And if you win the electoral college vote, you're the president. And it's like, I remember, was it in 1992, Ross Perot got 20 million votes as an independent, which is phenomenal, and hadn't a hope of winning the presidency. So it's something that maybe our American viewers might, enlighten us on a bit more and stuff like that. To me, I find that very, very difficult to work out.
as you say, a lot of Americans would find our
No,
political
absolutely, yeah,
system
yeah.
very hard to work
Exactly,
out.
exactly.
You know, I suppose I come from the north, and that is a different political system
Absolutely,
from down
yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah.
and that would be, and then the American system would be different. But we're all ruled under common law, Paul.
Correct, correct. That's
So
very true.
stay tuned, and we'll have lots more, maybe little tidbits or nuggets of information of what we think about when we walk around here. But this is absolutely beautiful.
It is,
It's the feeling here, Paul.
Oh, it's
the
lovely.
energy, the vibration
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I just think it's lovely.
Yeah, and a cup of coffee go down well now.
Cup of coffee.